G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff. The false promises of free healthcare. Now, before we continue, I'd like to point out that most countries are not as open and as transparent as others. So I don't have, going forward, a lot of statistics. But instead, it's a broad generalization. And this little statement's for you, YouTube, and your algorithms, not for the general viewing audience. So, g'day friends and fans. The free healthcare system. You keep hearing about it, but no one can point to one because they don't exist. They can't exist. Free healthcare merely means universally accessible without trade-offs. But the reality is, no system has been able to achieve that. No one can afford it, whether it's Australia's Medicare or UK's NHS. They're all full of hidden costs, corruption, massive wait times for even when it comes to essential surgery, and a heavy reliance on the private system to bail them out when the lines get longer and longer. It is all a false promise. Why? We'll get to that very shortly indeed. But before I continue, Empire of Elves, one word, myshopify.com. This is my one-stop shop for merch based on my writing. There's Cade, my little coffee fiend, and his delightful wife, sort of, who likes to play football and kick people in the shins. Isn't she adorable? She's fantastic. If you don't agree with her, she'll rip your heart out. It's good to be the king, isn't it? Well, if you're the king, wait till you're the emperor. Elon Musk would know. Cade's a trillionaire, and then some. Cade's up there in the plains looking down at Elon going, nice little rocket company. I have many. All right. Look, most people know free healthcare is falsehood, okay? The fundamental realities of government-funded healthcare systems is an eventuality, spiraling costs, and uncontrollable debt. The first stage, when they've lost control, out-of-pocket expenses. Well, basic consultations or emergency rooms, although they call them hospital visits, are generally covered. Patients frequently find they face gap fees. So the doctor brings you in and the first 5 minutes are free, and then they'll find something to hit you with. A vaccine, pills, anything to top up pad their wages. I'm not accusing every doctor of greed, but gap fees are generally between what the doctor charges and the government rebate, and increasingly doctors are looking at the fact that some of these equipment and machines that go ping cost a lot of money. And, those pings just have to be just tuned just right. And more regulations trying to create the perfect outcomes every time means government meddling has driven up the costs as well. So, and undertraining the amount of doctors we need far more doctors than we have. We just don't train enough. We deliberately don't train white boys to be doctors. We are suffering from political overload. See, if they actually had a functioning healthcare system, what would they run on? So they, of course, they have to sabotage it with greed, envy, and wrath. Wrath? Where does the wrath come from? Foreign doctors, of course. Now, prescriptions, usually between 70 to 80% of common drugs are covered, but they come at the cost of debt. Dental care is often minimal, if at best. And often the government relies on healthcare providers, and you saw this with Obama, to make up the difference, although ends up being requiring substantial co-payments over time. As the lawsuits pile up, the system just gets burdened, and that money has to come from somewhere, and the system never accepts responsibility for anything. So, like a good feminist, they carry on the charges directly to consumer. So you're paying everything. You're paying their taxes, you're paying their insurance, you're paying everything. And of course, you want the machines to go bing. All right, so once you've gotten fleeced, now you're sitting at the counter, filling in forms, even though this is your 10th visit this month. You're looking around, looking at all the single mothers who want their babies bathed, their nails clipped, their hair cut. I kid you not. There are women who go to hospital for pubic trims and to get those nice little toys they forgot to lubricate out of their pocket and back into their drawer. But there are many other things, such as all those young girls who put soap between their legs. No soap. Squirting soap into your VJ does not constitute birth control. And it's actually quite unhealthy and leads to problems in later life. Because you're cleaning the bacteria that keep your VJ clean, you silly ding-dong. So you're going to wait for hours because you're low priority. Now, of course, if it bleeds, it leads. And many, of course, women, to get ahead of the line, do cut themselves for attention. So you've got a lot of cutters and bleeders in the room. Don't stand too close now. You never know where especially the septum ring. Yeah, septum and septus, very close to each other, aren't they? The septus ring. So let's say you're older and you now have to wait in line for your sore knees just so you can get some arthritis cream that used to be over the counter. Or you're just going to have to keep cope and seed every day, like a lot of old people do, and get those. So instead of your once a month pill, you're going to spend lots of money on creams that make you feel good for about, what is it, 0.5 of a second, and then they wear off very quickly. Deep heat my ass. More like, we just got richer. So, of course, as you get older, it's going to be teeth, it's going to be gums, it's going to be your anus, it's going to be your prostate. Whatever it is, you don't have to you don't have to be on a waiting just to see for months. And I know one of cases, even my own, I had a damaged liver. I had to wait 6 months for an operation. and it was only brought forward when I started to develop pain that wouldn't go away, and painkillers weren't stopping, and it turned out I had a massive infection. Yay! So I'm telling you right now, from personal experience, you don't want free healthcare, son. You want health competition. No, we'll get to that. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. So, significant wait times, and if you've survived the wait times, there's now resource dropping. The eyedropper. The publicly funded system is strained. They frequently struggle to meet demand. So, even with healthcare insurance and other problems, many people realise that the public health system is an outdated business model. It's bloated with outdated bureaucratic infrastructure. Facilities are burdened by high numbers of patients to low numbers of qualified staff. There are lots of people in hospitals, thousands, in fact, in some really big hospitals, who are staffing offices, cleaning floors on an hourly basis. Right? They've got lots. There are hospitals with concierges and wait staff, and it's absolute ridiculous that with all the masseuses, but still they can only do so many a day, and they only do it when it's necessary. So you got lots of people sitting around because they're either single skilled or it's all a government work program. So and of course you have things like ambulance ramping. And if you haven't heard of that, you know where the emergency room is with the big old ramp. Normally, the ambulance comes in and unloads, but then that ambulance doesn't go anywhere. They're often waiting to be refueled, signed off for reimbursement, explaining all the doing all the paperwork, and sometimes they actually got a patient inside. More often than not, they got a patient inside, and then the one behind that, and the one behind that, and the one behind that. Reckless driving on the increase. Overdoses on the increase. Self-harm on the increase. Aging population. The number of people with poor medical conditions on the increase. So the system's strained by an aging population, a slowly declining drug-addled millennial population, and hospitals themselves bloated by bureaucracies and a lack of doctors. So what did the system do? A dual system, of course. Those who can pay, and get there. And even in public hospitals, to subsidise public hospitals, they have now private wards where they bypass queues, get all the benefits, get that heated pool, get that masseuse, get those daily, instead of getting a daily injection of something to stop you from getting blood clots, they actually get proper massages, they get all the nice little proper trimmed foods, all the foods they'll deny you, of course, as bad for your health somehow. So there's a 2-2 system where those who can pay and get it well, and those who can't get the trainee. And my English not so good now. You're speaking slowly. Point to where it hurts. Moaning grin, yes. Oh, yes. I'll take your liver out now. It's like, what? But those who can afford extra coverage have and always do deserve to get the care they paid for. It's just that the doctors who do private work only do public work when it's to their financial benefit, and therefore further take doctors out of the system because they don't train enough doctors. This way, doctors who are in the system get paid more. But the problem is, by over relying on doctors, you achieve burnout faster and have to end up importing doctors to replace those you lose in the system, and you bog doctors down with needless bureaucracy, so you end up with doctors spending half their time filling out paperwork that no one will read unless someone dies, and the majority of the time it's from the condition they had in the first place, but it has to be, checked, double checked, and triple checked by a panel of the establishment, of course. Because where there's doctors, there's money, and where there's money, there's lawyers. Just watch an episode of House. All right. So they rely on the dual system, which actually doubles up often on healthcare and healthcare costs, because now the state is paying private hospitals, and public hospitals are providing wards to private practices. So because the resources are so expensive and take so long to build and so long approval and all these other things, it just creates further delays. Again, it's inefficient. Two systems should be completely separate from each other, and one of the reasons why they overlap the public and private is so you don't see how efficient a private hospital and how efficient it is, because they have to make a profit, they have to pay taxes and pay wages, and another reason why the government pays doctors and nurses so much is to reduce the actual likelihood of them going private, because private hospitals need billions of dollars. So they're going to look at it and go, the risk is too big, and stay comfortable. And that's another problem. If they're comfortable, they don't do their best work. Political and economic vulnerability. You're open to everything. Scammers. Government budgets are already strained. Corruption, systemic corruption, where the unions come in and suddenly instead of having a manager and an assistant and a couple of floor staff, you suddenly have you got quotas on nurses, you got foreign imports, you got all the private consultancies, lawyers, political priorities on outcomes. So you're going to have someone, every time someone big goes into hospital, they get over treated and they get all the goodies, which takes the resources that normally given to everyone else for an eyedropper and lavishes on them daily. So they will write good articles in the newspaper, So hospitals are hit with funding caps, staggered rebates, where it's a hard to explain system, but here goes. They classify all these different treatments. There's treatments they won't allow until they become life-threatening. So things that normally cost small amounts of money, because a lot of it falls to trainees, and there are even so few trainees, the rebates are very small and infrequent. So often doctors have a nurse do them when they become semi a threat, because so if you're treated by a nurse practitioner, you're likely to get it for free. But what if a nurse practitioner isn't available, or a doctor trainee? Well, all of a sudden you have a surgeon who gets surgical rebates on removing a mole because it's suspected cancerous, but you can't afford his $3,500, but the state hits you with a rebate. So they bill you differently and rebate you. They'll bill you and then rebate you. Well, the problem is that they're billing you, which you pay at a higher amount, and they rebate you, say, 75%. But that 75% isn't your own money. It's borrowed money. They want the cash from your bank to prop up the system while they pay you with borrowed money. That's how inefficient and corrupt it is. So, say they bill you $400 and rebate you $350. They GDP, they add the $450 and the $350 together on top of the GDP. They borrow that $750 and pay you the $350. So that money sits in the bank. If it sounds like liberal economics, it is liberal economics. It is so corrupt. So all you're doing is saying to the poor, we're going to give you everything for free. And then they do, like California, and they go around telling them. You get... Now, I heard recently they were only giving $2. That was $2 an hour. Okay, it was only and some people only got $2 because they're only there for an hour. It's like I thought it was a joke when I heard in Arizona they were giving natives $10. They gave a native group whole stack of Amazon gift cards, and they're handing out $5 gift cards, which half of which the group kept for themselves for the votes. It's like, what sort of person? And then I realized the native group piles together their Amazon gift cards and makes Whole Foods purchases, or mostly likely arts and crafts purchases or they sell them to Indians for $4.50, and then the Indians get $4 on the exchange for them. So Amazon's buying its own cards back at a lower price through third parties to resell. It's like, wow. But this is the kind of thing that goes on, right? And people do anything. Well, often there's meals as well attached, but they'll do anything for their belief that they're going to get free healthcare, and it is doled out politically, and it is never going to be fixed, because any policy change will be resisted not just by the party that instituted free healthcare, but by the system itself that knows the only way to fix the healthcare system is to trim 2/3 of it, to fire 1/3 of it and trim the other 2/3 back to normal wages. Get rid of funding caps. Well, funding cap, basically hospitals are funded by the money they bring in. They know they are not public revenue. Get rid of the altered rebate system where doctors can bill fantastical amounts behind the scenes. You pay a very slim percentage of that, and then they borrow money to try and then pile up the money and keep borrowing against this pile of money until the pile of money starts reducing, and then they cut back. And then, of course, shifted tax burdens. They raise everyone's taxes and then as soon as there's a boom year, they lower taxes and tell everybody, well, we made progress. When in reality, no one's getting ahead because, the boom times don't last. And, of course, what about the impact to your living? You live through all those waiting periods. People who could have cancer and all these other things preemptively cut out or, dealt with are now burdens to the system because the system needs burdens. They literally need people waiting so that they have big healthcare problems so they can keep the beds full so they can keep their wages up. They may complain about overworking, but they're gleefully signing up for their third shift that week, third overtime shift. I think that's the maximum these days, but I'm not sure. How can you fix a system that is designed to be broken and broke? You take away the government funding. When people go broke and hospitals close, you know why all these hospitals closed in California? Yeah, some of them were private, but what about government? It's the same thing. When you when enough people learn the lesson, when enough people feel the pain, only then do they stop being bad. You have to punish people all the time. People are not naturally good. They only seek the easiest way to sustain themselves. If they have to work regular 12-hour shifts, that's not good. This idea that you work doctors long shifts and have them sleeping at hospitals, that's ridiculous. You have doctors studying to make sure that only the top few percent become doctors, when once upon a time there were lots of people like for coughs and colds, common stuff, someone to deal with, and today we would call them nurse practitioners, not doctors, but basically lots of practitioners who would, you got something I don't know, we put you to a dietitian. The best doctors, the few, would be dietitians, would see the difficult patients. But you would have those older experiences doctor in the back room and people would line up for it. But the practitioners would go, that's just a scratch or a sepsis or, they would take care of all the little things. Nurses would teach the mothers to clip their babies' nails and cut their hair and do all the things, and then you wouldn't see them again. Women who would do stupid things to their bodies or get sepsis from all their earrings and tattoos and that. You know what the doctors used to do? They would remove someone comes in with a septum ring, right? And they got sepsis. All their piercing, all their tattoos would be removed. Teach them a lesson. Right? Most people used to be taught lessons on. Nowadays, they don't even do that. If you come in poor health, they teach you to take better care of yourself. They don't do that anymore. Because it's voluntary. No, this voluntarism, there's no harmony. There's no balance, okay? There's no middle ground. Everyone's a freaking fanatic these days. The only way to fix a broken system is to directly take on those who broke it. And with the healthcare, the gluttonous public, and I'm not talking about all public, I'm talking about the people who go to the doctors to get their baby's nails trimmed, to get their own hair cut. Well, wait, Dad, you want to cut my hair too? I'm kidding you not. And another, They know how many doctors they need because they do this with the army. They do this with planned communities. But they're holding back because they want to force us all into planned communities. See, they're using the lure of free healthcare, and you look at it in California. They don't state it publicly, but all these planned communities, they don't call them that though. But more and more people are going, oh, wait, here's a hospital. You've got this central hub around the hospital of all these government services, and you've got all the, they're always within an hour of something, and they're, because LA is the most unplanned city in the world, which they're trying to redesign by force and negligence. But it's not the only one. I heard recently they're making plans in Switzerland to demolish some of the old cities and rebuild them as planned communities and institute a population cap. Mm-hmm. The disastrous reality is there's a twofold problem. One, there's a public who overuse there are segments of the public who overuse the hospital system, crowding it. There are companies who are looking for any and every way to dish out, second tier treatment pills rather than one course cures. And of course, what's the other part? The staff itself, the bloated system, the bureaucracy, the doctors on $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 that spreads the amount of available wealth in society thinner and thinner, and there's the outcomes don't match the benefits they bring. But they're there, highly skilled, because the system knows they need these highly skilled doctors to keep them alive. Well, because they won't give up their gluttonous, greediest lifestyles. They won't give up their rich foods and their sauces and their drugs and their alcohol. So the system itself is full of people with all sorts of problems, gout, obesity, diabetes, who want the system to keep them happy and healthy. Not so that they'll stop their problems, so they can continue being gluttonous and greedy for as long as they can before they bow out and sit in their pile of wealth. And trust me, imagine how many land seizures and all these things, for railways and where, I can tell you about corruption in railways and all this, but ultimately no one does a thing about it. The voters keep voting because they're absolutely tickled pink about the idea of getting their healthcare for free. Because all they can think about is what they're going to do with all that money they save. It's like the bus. It started with the buses, okay, where people just wanted a bus, right? And they hardly use it. But they are so in love with the idea that the bus is always there when they need it, that there are in most cities, about a third of buses are running empty. Public transport's at its worst, and in busiest areas, and whenever they do a public transport, they always go to the football match after a football match or a sporting event, where people are all piling onto the buses and say, look how in demand the buses are. If we cut these buses out, no one would be able to get home. That's not true. They're all taking buses to the outer ring where they get onto where they pick up their cars from parking stations and go home. It's always sticking the purr. Where are the poor going in a bus? Crackies. No, the system is run by ideologues who are far outdated, but the mentality to overcome is tremendous. But the lure of free healthcare, I think, once we get enough collapsed healthcare systems around the world, then, or worse, Canada's now talking about uh, people waiting for surgery to be given the option of suicide. Yeah, state is getting rid of people because they're embedded. Well, if people are a burden, you shouldn't have brought them into the country in the first place. Gosh. But the left are fanatics. They don't think normal outcomes like you and I. They only think, what gives me more power today? What's going to keep me in power? We need a certain amount of fanatics because they'll delete the vote of the public and keep us in power. And so that's what happens. But eventually those fanatics go, well, we want power. So you end up with the Green Party and all these other little parties, and you start getting the Islamic Party. But don't you dare say the White Christian Party. That's racist. And of course, they're all promising free healthcare. So all the feminist march in lockstep, going, "We won. Intersectionality works." Yeah, naive bastards, or should I say, bitches. But it's crazy how fanatical people get, and fortunately, we are seeing a slow reverse trend where people are waking up and realizing that you look around, our towns are dying, our cities are dying. The government's been covering up our murder, our death, our genocide for far too long. Feminism is the problem. Mass deportation is the solution. And send those feminists with them. Every single enabler. It's the only way to cure cancer is to purge the cancer. Preventative medicine is the best medicine, of course. Outlaw communism. But of course, America won't and never will, because chaos and the financial system go hand in glove. So thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please support the channel. I hope I provided you with enough talking points so you actually know why free healthcare is a problem and should never be allowed to be instituted, and why there should be medical competition and more medical schools and more practitioners in various medical fields to basically deal with the vast number of people out there who merely need a Band-Aid. So you can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. I appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.